I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into the transformative journey with April Moales about her wonderful book, Observe the Mask, an invitation to unveil the real you. This powerful book explores the spiritual aspects of identity, shedding light on the false identities we often carry. If you're seeking to live an authentic life and release your true self, this episode will be a must-watch for you. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put her in the spotlight today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her remarkable book. The links are below this interview. April, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Thank you for having me, Logan, and it's my pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. I love your book. I love the title, Observe the Mask. I guess in many ways, all of us wear some sort of mask from time to time or every day even, right?
Absolutely. Um, I think that's one of the reasons why I had the idea of coming up with the book. My mother is a psychologist, and so I was brought up around Carl Jung. And when let's see, the cover that you see here, Observe the Mask. The first edition was actually published 20 years ago. And that was back in 2004. And at that time, I was a part of a community called the INTA, which is the International New Thought Alliance. And that's where I began my speaking career and hosting self-empowerment workshops. And after a series of doing those self-empowerment workshops and giving and sharing some of the principles that I now have in the book, my audience and the community they were like, oh my God, how do I make this a practicum in my life? How can I take you home with me? And that's where the book was born. And now 24 years later, just as the cover is compelling, the content is still relevant and just as compelling for who we are and who we think we are, and i.e. being defined by this mask that we wear in our human identity.
Great and fascinating topic and concept. Talk to me a little bit about the concept of false identities and how they impact our daily lives.
Yes, so false identity, I would term that as the ego. Because who we are, like who you see, who I see you as, who you see me as on screen, this is our earth suit. But the essence of who we are is greater than the mask. It's greater than the identity. It's greater than ego. So ego is, it's an internal journey. Well, actually, the book is an internal journey that has you explore how ego gets created. And so when you are creation, that's where we can tie in the false identity, because we think we are who we've created ourselves to be. When on this journey, we begin to observe that our thoughts are not who we think we are. I would call them the external influences on who we think we are, whether it's education, whether it's media, whether it's religion. Right now, we're in a political endeavor. And so whether it's what the politics say that we are as individuals or a collective community. So to answer your question, I know I kind of went on a general context, but the false identity would be when you think you are who you've created yourself to be, or those external influences have defined you to be.
Gotcha. This is basically a persona we create for ourselves, which might not be our authentic self, right?
Absolutely.
Tell us, what are some of the practical steps readers can take to identify and release those false identities?
Excellent question. So I'll start with chapter 1. Chapter 1 is ego, the created self. So one of the premises of the book is first being able to observe ego. And the first step is to become aware that there's something that you created from childhood, and these external influences that I mentioned created this identity. And now the first step is you become aware that, wow, I'm aware of how I think and who shaped that thought. You begin to ask these pivotal questions, these internal questions about who am I and who created that? And then is this who I was, my purpose? Is this who I am? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, exactly. By doing some self-reflection, it's very, very important. To have an examined life is very, very important. And I'd imagine spirituality plays a role in all of this as well, in discovering and embracing our true selves, right?
Yeah, I would say so. When you said an unexamined life, one of the philosophers that I studied as a metaphysician, Socrates, I like his quote that says, "An unexamined life is
Not
not
worth
worth
living.
living."
Yes.
So going back to spirituality, the book, from the context of spirituality, talks about who we are as energy and information, and the ego being an expression of thought, being expression of belief, patterns, again, from those external influences, our parents, our first influences. But so the spiritual context is that when metaphysically, if you break anything down in physical matter down to its lowest common denominator, it's energy. And spiritually speaking, God, or however you want to label the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent spirit, the God, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, whatever you ascribe to, that spirit is in all things. And so too, like, for instance, I use this analogy of, if you take God and use it as the infinity pool of the ocean, and you dip a glass if you dip a glass into the ocean, what do you have inside of the glass?
So the ocean.
You have ocean.
Yeah.
So this body that I'm in, it's the legal earth suit that allows me to be physical in physical matter. But if you break it down into its lowest common denominator, it's energy, electrons, protons, and neutrons.
Mhm.
Now, that glass, it has a container. I call the body the container of ocean. If we just labeled ocean as the spirit of the infinity, the God, then we have within us God, creator, source. So the book is about understanding who you are as the source, as the expression of the creator, creating your identity, and then being responsible for that power as being a co-creator of your own reality. How about this one? Being responsible for being the author of your story.
Wait. We all have to write our own stories. We have to write them in an authentic voice in order to have the best story, in order to have the best life, for sure. What do you hope readers gain from reading Observe the Mask?
Well, first, I think is self-awareness, understanding that you are not who you are. And just the mask itself, if you look at the cover, and the definition of the face or form of anything has limitation. So if you ascribe to ego, then you think that you are limited and you traffic life as such. So what I want the reader to get is that you are not your creation, you are the creator of your creation. You are the source of your story.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All great advice, all great insight for sure. The name of the book is Observe the Mask, an invitation to unveil the real you. It is a powerful book that explores the spiritual aspects of identity, shedding light on the false identities that we often carry. If you want to live an authentic life and release your true self, this book is something that could change your life. April, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me once again. It's been a pleasure. And thank you so much for the endorsement. Thank you for reading the book. And also, if we have a couple of minutes, can I just share why I designed the cover as such?
Absolutely. Go ahead. Tell us about that.
Okay, so in addition to my metaphysical background, when I was a candidate for PhD, I also have a degree in computer science, specializing in computer information systems. And so the principles inside the book are in the context of metaphysics. You have, it's philosophical, it's psychological, of course, it's metaphysical, it's ontological, and it also has Eastern philosophy and some Greek philosophy, and how those philosophies integrate with the rise of artificial intelligence, AI. And so, and the relationship between the two. And if you don't become the observer of your ego, of your mask, then I assert that you are artificial intelligence. That is just so amazing. I assert that you're unconscious human being, like artificial intelligence, a set of programs void of self-awareness. So as an author, and I also ascribe to be an artist, I wanted to graphically depict the humanness, which is that left side is my face. And then those that are not aware, that do not become the observer of your own creation, I assert you are artificial intelligence, unconscious programs.
Interesting. Great point. April, sounds like a fascinating book. It is a fascinating book. I think our audience will absolutely love it. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.